All right, so back to section 3. How does the church help Catholic faithful to speak about political and social questions? All right. This section is divided several ways. A well-formed conscience, which we've talked about already. The virtue of prudence, which basically says we need to work on our prudence. We need to build up prudence so that we can better follow our conscience and act on the good. And then doing good and avoiding evil, and then making moral choices. So let's first start with doing good and avoiding evil. And the first thing the bishops do is they talk about avoiding evil. Why? Because it's easier to talk about. It's a little clearer and a little bit more straightforward. So avoiding evil. In paragraph 22 of the document, the bishops say this. There are some things we must never do as individuals or as a society because they are always incompatible with the love of God and neighbor. Such actions are so deeply flawed that they are always opposed to the authentic good of persons. These are called intrinsically evil actions. They must always be rejected and opposed and must never be supported or condoned. So the language here the bishops use is pretty absolutist. It's pretty clear. These things are always and everywhere wrong. There is never a situation where this could be right. Ever. It doesn't matter who you are, what age you live in, or what the weather said. No, it's always wrong. I think that's pretty clear. They are intrinsically evil, which means they're evil in and of themselves. And what the other thing about this statement I think is very important is that not only are we not to support these things, right, but we have a moral obligation to oppose them. Right? So it's not good enough that just to say, well, I'm not supporting it, so I'm okay. The teaching of the bishops is you have to actually proactively work against these intrinsic evils because they're that damaging to social justice and the common good. So long as these intrinsic evils exist in a legal structure, they harm the common good. In fact, this is what the bishops say in the same paragraph. They say a legal system that violates the basic right to life on the grounds of choice is fundamentally flawed. Fundamentally flawed. So it's not good enough that we just say, well, I'm not supporting it. We have to work against it. We have a moral obligation to work against it. That's the fullness of what it means to stand up for human dignity in this culture. The bishops go on. A prime example of the intentional taking of an innocent life is in abortion and euthanasia. Human cloning and destructive research on human embryos are also intrinsically evil. Other direct assaults on innocent human life and violations of human dignity, such as genocide, torture, racism, and the targeting of non-combatants and acts of terror or war, can never be justified. This is the list given by the bishops in this document of the intrinsic evils. That is, things that are always and everywhere wrong. There's no wiggle room. No wiggle room. Now, does this mean this is an exhaustive list of everything that's intrinsically evil? No. There are lots of things that are intrinsically evil. For instance, in the Catechism, you look this up, lying is intrinsically evil. Lying. Now, it depends a little bit on how you define lying, but we won't get into that. But according to the Church, lying, when it's lying, is always wrong, intrinsically evil. There's never a situation where it's okay. Now, should we have laws against lying? Well, no. It's unenforceable. Is there a political party that's touting, hey, we should have laws for lying? No. Is there a political party or candidate that says, this is an important aspect of our Constitution, we should make sure that everybody lies as much as they can? No. No, we don't. Right? So the bishops don't mention it. They don't mention it. Doesn't mean it's not intrinsic evil, it just means it's not, to use a phrase, in play. It's not an issue that's being argued about in our current political system. So that's avoiding evil. That's the list of intrinsic evils. There are other evils, and we'll talk about those here in a second, but those are the intrinsic evils. Now, how about doing good? Let's talk about the nice stuff for a second. The bishops say our positive duty to contribute to the common good and to act in solidarity with those in need is important for Catholics. Both opposing evil and doing good are essential obligations. So we have a moral obligation to work against intrinsic evils. We also have a moral obligation to work towards doing good, to bringing about the common good. to creating a just society. We have a moral obligation to do that too. Now, it gets a little bit harder because unlike intrinsic evil, some things are good in and of themselves, but how you achieve those goods, that's a different question. As an example, for instance, the church teaches that laborers have a right to a just wage. We should agree with that. Laborers have a right to a just wage. That's part of the church's teaching. It's in the catechism. However, how you go about making sure everybody has a just wage, that's a different question. Should it be through wage supplements? Should it be through tax credits? Should it be through a minimum wage? Should it be through any number of it? How should it look? Well, that's something good Catholics can argue about. That's where prudence starts to come in. And we can sit down and say, well, this is a prudential issue. That's, I don't know, that agreement. We can argue about it in charity. But even if we disagree, it doesn't mean we should just sort of throw up our hands and say, well, I guess that's up to who knows. I don't have to worry about that. It's not intrinsic evil, so it's not my problem. That's not the right attitude.